This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. I genuinely think the Cleveland Browns should win all the awards. Now, what do I mean by all the awards? I mean, I think the Browns have the best case for Coach of the Year. I think the Browns have the best case for Executive of the Year. I think the Browns have the best case for Defensive Player of the Year. And I think the Browns have the best case for Comeback Player of the Year. Now, I don't know what the odds are on this kind of a thing. I don't know how often it has happened that a team has won multiple NFL awards in one year, let alone send a bunch of players to Pro Bowl, all that stuff. I don't know how often that happens. I would bet not very often. I don't think it's happened that much since I've been paying attention. So it would be a rare feat. And it would require a pretty rare season in order for this to happen. But I'm about to tell you why the Browns might just qualify for all of this. So, first things first, the Browns should have the Coach of the Year. Why do I think the Browns should have Coach of the Year? I mean, this is the most obvious one. To be honest with you, this is the one where I feel like I have to do the least explaining to justify. I think it's pretty inherent. The Cleveland Browns have a significant portion of their roster on IR. Last time I checked, that number was at 25% or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but I do know that the number is straight up ridiculous. It is 26.12% of their cap is on IR, with 19 total players hitting IR this season, 13 currently on IR this season. That is the most in the NFL by a significant margin. Teams that are close to Cleveland this year are the New England Patriots, who are one of the worst teams in the NFL at 20.7% of their cap on IR. The Los Angeles Chargers at 19.53%. Again, one of the worst teams in the NFL this year with 10 players on IR. The Minnesota Vikings, 18.73%, Cincinnati Bengals, Buffalo Bills, all the way down 10 percentage points below the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns have a better record and have already clinched the playoffs. The Buffalo Bills are still trying to find their spot. So the Browns have dealt with injuries, not just a rash of injuries over the last couple of weeks, not like a rash of injuries at the beginning of the season. The Browns have dealt with injuries consistently, right? Week 1, you lose Jack Conklin. Week 2, you lose Nick Chubb. Week 3, you end up losing Deshaun Watson for a while. Deshaun Watson finally comes back. You lose him for the rest of the season. A couple weeks after that, then you lose Jed Wills. Then you lose DeJuan Jones, who was stepping in for Jack Conklin, who got hurt. Then you lose Grant Delpit. Then you lose all of these guys. All of these guys who are key players, who are important players, you've lost. Throughout the whole year, you've had to adjust. Now, some might say that might be a better argument for Executive of the Year. I think it's a good argument for both. One, what the Browns are doing right now, winning 11 games with 26% of the salary cap on injured reserve, is straight up rare. It has not happened very often. When the Baltimore Ravens, a team that we love to say is a great organization, when they were in a similar position as the Cleveland Browns, lost their quarterback, lost a lot of their key players, lost their running backs. This was a couple years ago. They finished in last place in the AFC North. The Cleveland Browns will, at the very worst, finish in second place with a chance to finish in first with a similar level of injuries. And it's not even similar because the Baltimore Ravens just went to Tyler Huntley. The Cleveland Browns have been through 4 quarterbacks. So you can just see how much adjusting this coaching staff has had. And oh, by the way, I just thought about this. There's no way the Browns also don't get assistant coach of the year, Jim Schwartz. He 100% deserves that. I don't know if I have to make an argument, but I guess I'll in an argument for Kevin Stefanski, I'll make a micro argument for Jim Schwartz, because why not? But Jim Schwartz, for assistant coach of the year, I think it's very obvious why he should be assistant coach of the year. Who has turned around a unit more than Jim Schwartz has this year? You could argue Brian Flores did a good job in Minnesota, turning around that defense. Again, similar situation to the Cleveland Browns. Minnesota's defense was not very good. He steps in, they're very good. The Cleveland Browns defense was awful last year, similar to the Minnesota Vikings. The Cleveland Browns might have one of the best defenses in the last 10 years. Like, it's the same level of job, just on a completely different level of success. Now, again, Brian Flores doesn't have Myles Garrett. He doesn't have Denzel Ward. You can make that argument for him. But what Jim Schwartz has been able to do with Myles Garrett is unparalleled to what anybody else has been able to do with Myles Garrett. What Jim Schwartz has been able to do with Denzel Ward is unparalleled versus anybody else who's had Denzel Ward. Like, having these guys that you're going to mention as reasons that maybe Jim Schwartz shouldn't win the award, they have not been these things that make it impossible for a coordinator to fail. We've seen this with our boy Joe Woods. So the thought process to me is he turned around the worst defense last year and made them one of the best defense in the NFL this year. Point blank, period. There's no debate. Like, we've done this before. They outplayed Baltimore when they played them. They've been a better defense in Baltimore. They're a better defense. They're the best defense in the NFL. For that turnaround to happen that quickly, and it's not just the turnaround that you're judging, the turnaround on the field, it's also the turnaround within the defensive culture of this team. It's special. Jim Schwartz should be assistant of the year. Now, Kevin Stefanski, how he got to Jim Schwartz was he was at a crossroads, right? He had to make some big decisions. Similar to Sean Payton, his third year in the NFL, when he was about to get fired from the New Orleans Saints, had to make some big decisions. Same thing happened with Kevin this year. Had to make some big decisions. Had to fire his friend from Minnesota, Joe Woods. Had to let go Mike Prefer, one of his mentors, and had to find new guys to run those shows. He picked Bubba Ventrone, who's been doing an excellent job, and he picked Jim Schwartz, who I just made an argument should be assistant coach of the year. Had to make those tough decisions, was successful with those tough decisions, and those tough decisions paid off for the Cleveland Browns. Then you look at what Kevin's been able to do with the offense the last few weeks, right? Because that's been the one thing holding people back from giving Kevin Stefanski coach of the year. Yeah, but Quincy, the offense hasn't been great all season, even though I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think the offense has been good for the 5 full games that Deshaun, 4 of the 5 games that Deshaun started, the offense was really good. And the offense has been really good when Joe Flacco's been out there, right? The offense has only struggled when PJ Walker and DTR were quarterbacks. And you can make an argument that the DTR struggles weren't as bad. And honestly, you could make an argument that the PJ Walker struggles weren't that bad. But he's done a great job with his offense, despite the fact that you lost Nick Chubb very early in the season. You lost a lot of your offensive line, and you were basically down to 3 wide receivers and a quarterback. And anybody who makes the argument that, oh, the Browns offense isn't great this year, that's why Kevin shouldn't be coach of the year, I think it's a very disingenuous argument to make, simply because once you lost Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson, the expectation was never for this offense to be great. The expectation was just for this offense to not be a disaster, and not being a disaster is a win in itself. But let's face it, they're not even that anymore. They're much better than that. They're actually kind of a good offense right now. Like if Amari Cooper's healthy, Elijah Moore's healthy, it's a good offense. Look what they did to the Jets. It's a good offense. There's no reason this offense should be good, but they're still a good offense. And this is no surprise to anybody who's watched Kevin Stefanski closely, right? Got some of the best stuff out of Baker Mayfield, the most efficient work out of Baker Mayfield in his whole career. Same thing with Kirk Cousins. And then also you work on with Jacoby Brissett. Able to get some really efficient work out of Jacoby Brissett. Hell, was able to cobble together wins against elite teams with PJ Walker and DTR. Over 500 teams, both of those guys, unless Pittsburgh drops under 500. Both of those guys won games over teams over 500. You know how much work it is to get a quarterback prepared for a start when they're not the normal starter? Now imagine doing that 3 times while also trying to work back in a quarterback who's rehabbing off an injury. That's great coaching. Imagine changing the playbook 4 different times for 4 different quarterbacks all throughout the year, right? This is Joe Flacco has been the quarterback the longest out of all of these quarterbacks when it comes to consecutive starts. Deshaun never started this year more than 3 games in a row, nor did DTR, nor did PJ Walker. Joe Flacco's been the only one who made it past 4 games. We're finally seeing what the offense looks like when a quarterback stays here for more than 4 games. And I think, honestly, like, one of the things we're forgetting is the lack of continuity that we had at quarterback. And one of the things Joe Flacco has been able to provide is continuity. So when you go into next year, you feel a lot better going forward about the quarterback position, because hopefully Deshaun gets to play more than 3 games in a row. He gets to play the whole season. And we're seeing the leap that Joe Flacco has made from his first 3 games to his last 2 games. You're seeing, okay, once they get that continuity in place and they get used to each other and they start playing a bunch of games consecutively in a row with each other, this offense takes a leap. Unfortunately, this year, we were never able to get past that 3-game marker. So the offense never took a leap with Deshaun like it has with Joe. But I'm confident that you give Deshaun 4 or 5 starts in a row, it's going to take a similar leap, because they're both very talented quarterbacks and very experienced, smart, formerly successful quarterbacks. It just doesn't go away. So it's been a spectacular job by Kevin Stefanski this year. There's really no good argument for him not to be coach of the year at this point. 11-5 so far, with a injury situation that most coaches would have folded from. But being 11-5 and still having a roster that's good enough to dominate NFL football teams, despite the fact that 26% of your salary cap is on IR. You know what else that says to me? That says to me that Andrew Berry's the executive of the year. Because who has done a better job filling out a roster? Not just at the beginning, loading a roster so much to where you can withstand some hits, right? Remember at the beginning of the season, one of the things I talked about was I was really excited about this team because I felt like they were at a point to where they can withstand some hits, right? They had to be at a point to where they could withstand some hits. Every NFL team has to do this, right? Whenever you look at your team and they don't win a bunch of games and you tell yourself, well, it's because this bad thing happened to us, you're just talking about a team that's not that good. Because if everything has to be perfect in order for your team to reach any level of success, well, then quite frankly, you're not that good. You're a fluke. But if everything can go wrong and you're still successful, well, then you're a pretty damn good team. The Cleveland Browns have had everything go wrong and have still maintained a good record and are a good football team because of the job that Andrew Berry has done as well. Andrew has done a great job not only signing the top level talent, right? Bringing in guys in the draft like JOK who has matured, making sure you extend guys like Grant Delpit who have matured, drafting guys like Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, DeJuan Jones, all of these guys who have stepped in. It's also the small stuff. Bringing in Duron Harmon, bringing in Joe Flacco, which honestly, if the more I hear about that, it seems like that was more of a Gary Kubiak suggestion to Kevin Stefanski and a Kevin Stefanski suggestion to Andrew Berry, the way that worked out. So I don't know how much credit anybody gets over Joe Flacco, but the fact is, it's the result of a collaborative process. He has found guys like Ronnie Hickman, undrafted free agent from Ohio State, rookie free agent. Ronnie Hickman steps in, balls out. Balls out so much that when Juan Thornhill comes back, we're like, hey, man, we got to find a way to keep Ronnie Hickman on the field. Yeah. He's playing that good. Had a pick six last night. Then you move forward and you see D'Anthony Bell, another undrafted free agent. I believe he was a UDFA last year. And he was a guy that we were all excited about because he was making plays in training camp. Finally gets an opportunity to play the Grant Delpit role. Plays it pretty well. Playing good football. Another UDFA. The Cleveland Browns have not only replenished this roster with talent throughout the year, but they've replenished this roster with young talent. D'Anthony Bell, young guy, second year in the NFL. Ronnie Hickman, rookie. Martin Emerson, third round talent. DeJuan Jones, fourth round talent. See, the Browns have not had first round picks because of the Deshaun Watson trade, but since they are a good team, the good organization, a well-managed team, that's not going to cost them that much talent because Andrew Berry has been able to find first-round level talent in other places in the NFL draft or outside of the NFL draft. That's spectacular GMing. You look at this team and you look at a team like the Denver Broncos who they're throwing up their hands and saying, man, we can't do anything because of all these first round picks that we traded. Then you look at the Cleveland Browns who have traded a similar amount of first round picks, similar amount of second round picks, and they're just able to reload year in, year out. It's because we're good at drafting, because we're good at signing free agents, because we're good at doing all that incremental stuff around the edges that makes somebody the executive of the year. Andrew Berry should be executive of the year. Think about all of the tinkering he's had to do because guys have gotten hurt. Think about all the tinkering he's had to do because quarterbacks have gotten hurt. Think about how many times he's had to activate a quarterback off the practice squad. Think about all of this stuff. Andrew Berry has done it well, while also getting a 5th round pick for Josh Dobbs. Yes, we're back on that, by the way. Remember when everybody thought that our season was cooked because we traded Josh Dobbs? At this point, and honestly, the Josh Dobbs point should be the last thing to make us not have the benefit of the doubt in Andrew Berry. It's probably going to work out if Andrew does it. We just got to trust it. Andrew Berry's really good at his job. All right. So that's coach of the year. That's executive of the year. Let's talk about defensive player of the year. Because I believe it should go to the best defensive player in football, and that's Myles Garrett. Now, look, if you want to point out stats, if you want to make defensive player of the year a statistical award, then go ahead and give it to whoever you want to give it to. I'm not here to make a statistical argument. Even though Myles Garrett has a very strong statistical case, yes, he doesn't lead the league in sacks, but sacks aren't the only stat that matters for an edge rusher. He's also very high in TFLs. He's also very high in pressures, quarterback hurries, quarterback hits, pressure to win rate, pass rush win rate. That's the stat. Double team rate. All of this stuff that would suggest that he's probably one of the best defensive players in football. He has those stats. Myles Garrett's got the stats. Like, he has them. 5 pass deflections. He's been all over the field, dominating run stops. He's been excellent at this year. He's been a beast. And you can find a stat to say he's been a beast all year. But here's how you really know what Myles Garrett is doing is super tangible and super effective on football teams. How many players in the NFL on the defensive side of football dictate a game plan quite like Myles Garrett? The answer is there's none. There's not a single player on the defense side of football that impacts a game plan more than Myles Garrett. There's not a single player that forces the ball to come out under 2 seconds like Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is at the point to where he doesn't even have to play well in order to affect the game because his impact is already set in. Teams have already said, teams have basically done a version of waving the white flag to Myles Garrett, saying basically, hey, we'll just act like you got pressure in 2 seconds and not even try to throw the ball downfield. We're not going to try a 5-step drop. We're definitely never going to do a 7-step drop. We're just not going to do it because Myles Garrett is there and we're terrified of Myles Garrett. It's no longer we're going to move the pocket a little bit to try to avoid him, but still try to get away with the 7. They just don't do it anymore. Like, teams has refused to do a 7-step drop against the Browns this year. They have refused to hold the ball for 2.5 seconds. They have refused to throw this ball downfield. And it's simply because Myles Garrett plays football for the Cleveland Browns. Name me another player that impactful. We're not even talking about if he does anything. We're not even talking about the fact that they're doing all of this and he's still getting to the quarterback. Got to the quarterback in 1.8 seconds individually last night? It's kind of the normal for Myles. Has led the best defensive line in football. Yeah, he's been that good. He's been that good. Myles Garrett has been the most impactful defensive player. NFL teams are most terrified. And you know what? If offensive coordinators were voting on this award, Myles Garrett would win it unanimously. Because there's not a single offensive coordinator or offensive line coach that goes into a game versus Cleveland and doesn't decide to put 3 guys on them. They're putting 2 guards, a guard and a tackle on them at times. They're putting a guard, a tackle, and a tight end on them. They are terrified of Myles Garrett in a way that modern NFL offenses have never been terrified by a single defensive player. The only thing close, in my opinion, is what teams used to do versus Darrelle Revis. And here's what's impressive about how much the lengths that teams go to avoid Myles Garrett. Here's what's impressive about it. The rest of the defense is very good. Like they are very good, and they still decide we'd rather deal with them one-on-one than deal with Miles. And they lose these battles consistently, but it's better to them to lose like that than to lose to Myles Garrett. And they're right. He's the most impactful, most dominant player in the NFL. I know some people are like, well, the sack total isn't where it needs to. If he gets 16 sacks, which he probably will, he's playing Cincinnati next week, and he's probably going to play in that game, then Miles going to get the award. He should get the award. He's Defensive Player of the Year. My last argument is going to be for Joe Flacco winning Comeback Player of the Year. Now, I know a lot of people have put this award prematurely in the hands of Damar Hamlin. I have spoken about how I feel like nobody's asked Damar Hamlin how he feels about this. And before people complete this gesture to him, we really ought to make sure that this is something that he and his family would appreciate. Because I don't feel like enough thought, energy, and care has been put into actually figuring out what Damar Hamlin wants. It's been about what we want Damar Hamlin to want. It's not been about Damar Hamlin. Again, and if you don't believe me, find the Damar Hamlin quote where anybody's asked him how he feels about any of this, how he feels about wanting to, about getting Comeback Player of the Year and all this. Like, seriously, it would do everybody a benefit if we actually asked Damar Hamlin how he felt about this. Like, because we could be doing a mistake trying to be nice, trying to give him a gesture. And it could expose that we're not giving him this gesture for Damar. Because, again, we haven't asked Damar. That we're giving him this gesture for ourselves, for our own gratification, to make ourselves feel good. And that's not a good reason to give somebody an award. So really, 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 we should ask that question. But outside of that, Joe Flacco should be Comeback Player of the Year. Now, there's a good argument for Baker Mayfield. I would say what Joe Flacco has done has been a little bit more impressive than Baker Mayfield. He's come off the couch at age 38, and he's leading a team possibly to the division championship, to a 1 seed. He's put up incredible numbers, and he's playing his best football since 2014. Baker Mayfield's playing his best football since 2020. He's doing well, but Baker Mayfield's still in his athletic prime. He's 28. It's not unheard of for him to play well, right? He's in his athletic prime. First time in a decent situation being committed to as a starting quarterback since 2021. And he's playing well. And he should get some kind of recognition for that. But I don't think Comeback Player of the Year. I think that goes to Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco came off the couch and he's playing the best football of his life. How's that not Comeback Player of the Year? Isn't that what the award's for? Like, literally, you were counted out the league last year, and now you're playing the best football of your life. That sounds like Comeback Player of the Year to me. I don't know who else could be Comeback Player of the Year if we're making an argument from anything that happened on the field this year. It's Joe Flacco. Again, Baker makes a good argument, and I'm really happy for Baker, by the way. It's really good to see that he got his career back, because it was a rough, bumpy patch for him, right? Figure some stuff out. He's back where he needs to be. He's playing good football. He's playing fun football, and he should be good there in Tampa Bay for a little while. I'm happy for him. But Joe Flacco should win Comeback Player of the Year because what he's done is a little bit more impressive. 38 years old. Way out of his athletic prime, still figuring it out, and not just figuring it out, man, playing the best football of his life in some very important games. Like, every game that Joe Flacco played in was like pivotal. So continuing to rack up big wins, Joe Flacco, he should be Comeback Player of the Year. And think about that, Browns fans. I just sat here and made serious and reasonable arguments for the Browns to win 4 NFL honors. Not just win them, why they should be the favorites to win them. 4 of them. Look how far this organization has come in the last 4 years. Look how much ground they have made. This is a different team than what we remember. This is a different team than what we grew up with. And boy, is that a good change. Because the Cleveland Browns should win all the awards. And that says everything about who the Cleveland Browns are and have been building towards since 2020 and 2023. But that's all I have for you today. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody for dropping a comment. I want to thank everybody. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.